When I woke up, everything was white. It had the ceiling, the sheets, the smell. Even the air felt white. A nurse's voice floated somewhere near my ear, calm and practiced. "Mrs. Bennet, can you hear me?" My throat burned when I tried to speak. I could only nod. And then, before she even told me where I was, I remembered the sound. The crunch of metal. The scream that wasn't quite mine. The flash of headlights. Then, nothing. Now, as I blinked into the sterile light, I realized I wasn't dead. But maybe I should have been, because the life I'd known, the one I had before the crash, was gone. Before all this, my world was small and safe. Or at least I thought it was. Mark and I had been married for 11 years. We lived in a quiet suburb outside of Richmond, Virginia, a house with blue shutters and an overgrown hydrangea bush that refused to die no matter how badly I trimmed it. He worked in insurance. I taught English at the local high school. Our life wasn't exciting, but it was ours. Slow mornings, burnt coffee, laundry folded on Sundays while we argued over the thermostat. If anyone had asked me then, I would have said we were happy. He'd kiss me goodbye every morning, a quick brush of lips, his aftershave lingering, and text me around noon. "How's your day, babe?" It wasn't romance, not anymore, but it was comfort. And sometimes comfort feels like love. But comfort can also hide things. It can make you stop looking too closely. It started, as most betrayals do, with something small. Mark grew quieter. At first, I told myself it was work, stress, deadlines, that new regional position he was chasing. He started going to meetings that didn't exist on his calendar. Coming home later, his phone glued to his hand like an extra limb. When I'd ask, he'd smile and say, "You're imagining things again, Claire." That word, again, cut deeper than he probably meant. It reminded me of the year I miscarried, when I saw shadows in every corner of our marriage. He told me I was being paranoid then too, so I swallowed my doubts. I told myself love meant trust. But love also means seeing what's right in front of you. And one night, I saw it. It was a Friday in early October. The air smelled like rain and wet leaves. Mark came home late, drenched but smiling. That smile. I hadn't seen it in months, but it wasn't for me. He dropped his jacket on the couch, humming under his breath, and I noticed something strange. A lipstick stain on the inside collar. A soft pink, the kind I never wore. "Who's that from?" I asked, my voice more brittle than I intended. He looked down, frowned, and laughed. "The receptionist at work. She leaned in too close when she handed me a file. It's nothing." But he wouldn't meet my eyes, and that's when I felt the first real crack. Weeks passed. He started sleeping in the guest room, said he snored too loud. His text messages grew shorter. "Busy. Later. Don't wait up." It wasn't dramatic, and no slammed doors or shouting, just a slow unraveling. Until one night he sat me down at the kitchen table. The air smelled of burnt garlic and tension. He wouldn't look at me. His hands were folded like a child about to confess. "Claire," he began, "I don't think this is working anymore." For a second I thought he meant the dinner. Then I saw the envelope in his hand, thick, white, with my name on it. "I want a divorce." There was no anger in his voice. That almost made it worse. It was the tone of someone who'd already left a long time ago. I stared at him, waiting for him to take it back, waiting for the punchline. Instead, he sighed. The kind of sigh that ends something, and added softly, "I've met someone else." Her name was Emily. She was a co-worker, 29, blonde, with the kind of easy laugh I used to have. I asked how long it had been going on. He didn't answer, But his silence told me enough. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just nodded, stood up, and began washing the dishes that had gone cold in the sink. The clatter of plates was the only sound between us. He said he'd move out in a few weeks, that he didn't want to make this harder than it already was. But by then, I was already gone. Emotionally, spiritually, everything but physically. I remember standing at the window that night, looking at the hydrangeas swaying under the streetlight and thinking, maybe this is what dying feels like. The accident happened 3 days later. I was driving home from the grocery store, a rainstorm beginning to blur the windshield. I remember fumbling with the radio, trying to find something to fill the silence. The last thing I saw was a pair of headlights, too close, too fast, and Mark's voice echoing in my head. I've met someone else. Then, nothing but sound. Metal folding, glass shattering, the world splitting open. When I woke up in that hospital bed weeks later, the nurse said I'd been in a coma for nearly a month. My body was bruised, my left leg in a cast, but my heart felt like a foreign organ. Mark wasn't there. The nurse hesitated when I asked for him. Then she said gently, "He came to see you. At first." "At first," I repeated. She nodded. "But then there was a service. He said goodbye." I blinked at her, confused. "A service?" Her eyes softened. "Your obituary ran in the paper, Mrs. Bennet. He thought you had passed." For a moment, the room tilted. I had died. Officially, legally, and my husband had buried me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later, when I saw the photo from my own funeral. And the woman standing next to my casket, holding my husband's hand, wearing my favourite black dress. Emily. It's strange seeing your own funeral. Even stranger when the woman who replaced you looks like she's enjoying the spotlight. I stared at the photograph in silence. My sister Karen had shown it to me reluctantly. She'd been the one who stayed by my side in the hospital when Mark stopped coming. It was a picture from the memorial service, my picture framed by white lilies, my name written beneath in gold script, in loving memory of Claire Bennett, 1985-2024. And next to my casket, there he was. Mark, in the suit I bought him for our anniversary. His head bowed, his arm wrapped protectively around her. The caption from a local paper read, "Husband of the late Claire Bennett finds comfort in colleague during grief." I almost laughed. Comfort. The word rolled in my mind like poison candy. Karen squeezed my hand. "I didn't want you to see it, but you deserve to know." I could barely whisper. He buried me and brought her. She looked away. They even spoke together, like a couple. That night, when the nurses dimmed the lights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I felt like a ghost, alive but erased. He hadn't just left me, he'd replaced me, in death and in life. The weeks that followed were a blur of recovery and paperwork. Because I'd been declared dead, everything from my bank account to my driver's license was frozen. I was legally non-existent. The irony didn't escape me. My husband had wanted a clean break and fate had handed him one. But fate can be cruel in ways men can't control. Karen helped me file to restore my identity, and while we sat in the county clerk's office surrounded by beige walls and flickering lights, I asked her quietly, "Are they still together?" She hesitated. "Claire, you should focus on healing." "That's an answer," I said softly. When she finally met my eyes, there was pity there. "Yes, they're living together. In your house." I went still. My house. The blue-shuttered home with the overgrown hydrangeas. The kitchen where I'd burned garlic the night he told me he wanted a divorce. The place that had once smelled of coffee and morning sunlight. Now it was theirs. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Of memories. Of space. Of identity. And for the first time since I woke up, I felt something other than pain. I felt rage. When I was discharged from the hospital, Karen offered me her guest room, but I couldn't stay there, surrounded by pity, by the hum of someone else's refrigerator. I needed to see it for myself. So one afternoon, still limping, I took a cab to my old address. The driver didn't recognize me from the obituary, thank God. When we turned the corner, my breath caught. The house looked the same, except for the red car in the driveway, hers probably. There were new curtains too, floral ones. I could see silhouettes moving behind them. I sat there, hidden behind the car window, and watched as Mark came out onto the porch, holding a baby monitor in one hand. A baby monitor. My chest tightened. Could it be? No, too soon. But maybe it wasn't hers. Maybe it was someone else's. Then she appeared behind him, barefoot, laughing, wearing my old robe. My robe. I felt the world tilt again. She leaned up to kiss him, quick and casual, like they'd done it 1,000 times. That's when I whispered to myself, he didn't just bury me. He built a life over my grave. I told no one about that visit, but that night I opened my laptop and began gathering every document I could, medical records, insurance files, bank statements. It turned out that Mark had already filed for my life insurance. 2 weeks after my death, $250,000. He'd told the company I had no surviving dependents. He hadn't even listed me as his wife anymore. It was blood money, and he'd spent it. Part of it went toward paying off our mortgage, the rest into a joint account with her. The date on that account's creation. 3 days after my funeral. I printed every file, every signature, every timestamp. My hands trembled, but my heart felt steady. This wasn't just betrayal. This was fraud. And for once I had proof. When I showed Karen, she covered her mouth. Claire, are you sure you want to go down this road? You could just start over. But I shook my head. He didn't let me start over. He took my name, my money, my dignity. I want my life back. She sighed. Then we'll need a lawyer. We found one. A kind woman named Denise Harper, who'd handled wrongful death claims before. After I told her everything, she leaned back in her chair, eyes wide. Mrs. Bennett, she said, you have a solid case, but it's going to get ugly. I smiled faintly. It already did. A week later, Denise filed the papers to reverse my death certificate and open a criminal investigation for insurance fraud. The ripple effect was immediate. Mark received the summons at our house, my house, and within 24 hours, he called me. The sound of his voice after all those weeks sent a chill through me. Claire, you're alive. I stayed quiet. Do you have any idea what you've done? He asked. His tone wasn't relief. It was panic. I should ask you the same, I said. He stammered. It wasn't like that. I thought you were gone. Emily helped me grieve. We didn't plan this. I almost laughed. You didn't plan the obituary, the claim, or the account either, I suppose. He exhaled sharply. I can explain. Good, I said. You'll have a chance to. In court. He cursed under his breath. Claire, please don't do this. You're angry and I get it, but we can work this out privately. Privately, I repeated. Like you worked out your affair? There was silence on the line, followed by something that almost sounded like guilt. Then he said softly, "You weren't supposed to come back." That single sentence told me everything I needed to know. That night I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Pale, thin, but alive. And I thought about how death had stripped me bare. It had taken everything, my marriage, my home, my name. But maybe it had given me something too, a clean slate. Because when you've already died once, you stop fearing what people can take from you. I wasn't the same woman who folded his shirts and believed his lies. I was someone reborn, not by miracle, but by survival. And I was done being buried. The court case drew more attention than I ever expected. Apparently being the woman who came back from the dead makes headlines, especially when the husband who buried her is facing fraud charges. At first, I tried to hide. I wore a scarf and sunglasses when I left the house, but reporters still camped outside Karen's porch. They wanted the story. How does it feel to see your husband again? Did he know you were alive? Do you forgive him? Forgive. That word followed me everywhere, as if forgiveness was some switch I could flip. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. The first hearing was surreal. I sat there in the front row, my hands folded tightly in my lap, while Mark walked in with his lawyer. And her. Emily. She looked smaller than I remembered, but maybe that was because she wasn't hiding behind stolen confidence anymore. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her eyes darting around the courtroom like she wished she could vanish. When Mark's eyes finally met mine, his face drained of colour. For a moment he looked human, not guilty, not angry, just afraid. Denise leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't react. Let the evidence speak." So I didn't. I sat perfectly still while the judge reviewed the documents, the insurance claim, the forged death certificate, the account transfers. Every lie he told was printed in black and white. When the prosecutor asked, "Mr. Bennett, at what point did you learn your wife was still alive?" His voice cracked. He stammered something about confusion, grief, mistaken paperwork. But his eyes, they darted toward Emily, and the truth was right there. He knew. He just didn't care. After the hearing, I stepped outside into the cold air and finally breathed. Karen was waiting by the steps. "You did well," she said softly. "You kept your composure." I smiled faintly. "That's all I have left." "Not true," she said, looping her arm through mine. "You have your life back. You have us." But she didn't know how heavy life felt. It wasn't freedom yet. It was debris, scattered pieces of the person I used to be. Over the next few weeks I received letters from lawyers, reporters, even strangers. Some called me brave, others called me lucky. But luck had nothing to do with it. Luck was what saved me from dying on that road. Everything after that was survival. I moved into a small apartment near the coast. The air smelled like salt and rain, and at night, the sound of the ocean was the only thing that helped me sleep. Sometimes I'd sit by the window and write. Not to anyone, just to myself. Letters I'd never send. Things I'd never said. "Mark, I loved you so deeply it blinded me. Mark, you didn't just kill our marriage. You killed the woman who thought she couldn't live without you." But each letter ended the same way. "I'm still here." Then, one afternoon, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a short note in handwriting I recognized instantly. "I'm sorry, Claire. I didn't know how to stop it. I never meant for it to go this far. And beneath it, a second sheet, a sonogram photo. At first I didn't understand. Then my breath caught. Emily was pregnant. And the date on the sonogram meant she had been even before my death. My hands trembled. I wanted to tear the paper apart, to throw it into the sea. But instead I set it down carefully and whispered, "So that's why he wanted the divorce." Suddenly everything made sense. The urgency, the guilt, the distance. She wasn't just a mistress. She was an escape plan. The second court date came a month later. This time Mark didn't look at me. His lawyer negotiated a plea deal, restitution and probation instead of prison, provided he repaid the insurance money in full. It was justice, I suppose. But justice rarely feels satisfying. When the judge read the verdict, I didn't cheer, I didn't cry. I just watched him sign the papers that would end everything between us for good. When it was over, he finally turned toward me. His eyes were hollow. "I didn't mean for it to end like this," he said quietly. I stood there for a moment, studying the man I once built my life around. The same man who used to warm his hands on my coffee mug, who once painted our bedroom walls with me at midnight. "I know," I said. "You never mean it, Mark. You just let it happen." He swallowed hard. "She's having my child." I nodded. "Then be better for that child than you were for me." He opened his mouth to speak again, but I turned and walked away before he could. After the case ended, I took a job teaching part-time again. The classroom became my sanctuary, the smell of chalk dust, the scratch of pens on paper, the hum of teenage chatter. One day during a creative writing exercise, a student asked, "Mrs. Bennett, what makes a story powerful?" I paused, then said quietly, "When the person telling it finally learns they can survive it." The class went silent for a beat. Then the girl smiled as if she understood. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I walked along the pier behind my apartment. The ocean was calm, the kind of calm that feels earned. I thought about everything I'd lost, and everything I'd reclaimed. The life I had before wasn't perfect, but it was familiar. The life I had now was uncertain, but it was mine. And that was enough. Weeks later, I heard through Karen that Mark and Emily had moved away. Apparently, things weren't going well. The stress, the scrutiny, the guilt, it all caught up to them. A small part of me felt sorry for her. She'd built her happiness on someone else's ruin. That kind of love never lasts. And as for Mark, I think he finally realized that losing me wasn't just about losing a wife. It was losing the person who had loved him even when he didn't deserve it. Sometimes, that's the harshest punishment of all. The day I received the official letter reinstating my identity, confirming that Claire Bennett existed again, I cried for the first time in months, not out of grief, out of relief. The world knew I was alive again, but this time, I wasn't living for anyone else. It took almost a year for life to settle into something resembling peace. But peace, I've learned, doesn't always arrive quietly. Sometimes it comes disguised as loneliness. My mornings were simple now. A pot of tea, a walk by the sea, a book half read on the windowsill. There were still traces of the old me, the woman who cooked breakfast for two, who arranged fresh flowers on the dining table because Mark liked lilies. But there was something new too, a steadiness, a kind of quiet pride that came from surviving what was meant to destroy me. People from my old life reached out occasionally, cautious messages from mutual friends, tentative invitations from colleagues. They didn't know how to act around me. To them, I was still The woman whose husband tried to replace her before she was gone. I didn't blame them. Even I hadn't fully understood who I'd become yet. One evening, I visited my sister Denise. She'd stood by me when I had no one else, and now her kitchen felt like a second home. The air smelled of garlic and simmering soup, and the faint hum of her old radio filled the space. As she ladled soup into bowls, she said, "You look better. There's colour in your cheeks again." I smiled. That's what happens when you stop crying every morning. She chuckled softly, then sat across from me. "Do you ever think you'll date again?" I looked down at my spoon, tracing circles in the broth. "I don't know if I want to." The thought of trusting someone again. It feels like touching a wound that's just starting to heal. Denise reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to rush. Healing doesn't have a deadline." Her words stayed with me long after dinner. That night, as I watched the waves outside my window, I realized she was right. I didn't need to fill the silence with someone else's voice. For once, I was okay hearing my own. But life has a strange way of testing the peace you've built. A few weeks later, I received a message on social media from someone I didn't recognize. The name read, Sarah Mitchell. Her message was short. "Hi Claire. You don't know me, but I think we share something in common. Can we talk?" I hesitated. Normally I ignored messages from strangers, but something about her tone, polite, careful, made me curious. We exchanged a few messages before she revealed the truth. She was Emily's sister. She wanted to meet, not to cause trouble, but to apologize. My first instinct was to say no. The last thing I needed was to reopen wounds. But something in me wanted closure, real, human closure. So I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. She looked younger than Emily, with the same blue eyes but a gentler face. When she saw me, she stood immediately. "Mrs. Bennet, Claire, thank you for coming." I nodded, sitting down. "You said you wanted to talk." She exhaled. "I came because I wanted to tell you that she's not well." I didn't say anything, waiting. "She had the baby a few months ago, a girl, but Mark left. He couldn't handle the pressure, the judgment, the shame. Emily's been alone since." Her eyes filled with tears. She told me she never meant for any of this to happen. She said she thought he was going to leave you anyway. That it was love. "Love," I repeated quietly, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "She asked me to tell you she's sorry. She said she doesn't expect forgiveness, but she wanted you to know she regrets everything." I sat there for a long moment, the sound of coffee cups clinking around us, the low murmur of strangers' conversations blending with the hum of my thoughts. I finally said, "Tell her. I hope she finds peace, but I can't carry her guilt for her." Sarah nodded, tears spilling over. "That's fair." When she left, I stayed behind, staring out the window. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt release. Sometimes closure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from choosing not to hate anymore. Months passed. Seasons changed. I began teaching full-time again, and one afternoon, a small miracle happened. A student named Lily, bright, shy, always scribbling in her notebook, handed me a short essay titled "My Mother's Second Chance." It was about her mum surviving a car crash and learning to live again. At the end, she wrote, "Sometimes the world tries to bury you, but it forgets you're a seed." That line, it stayed with me, because that's what I'd become. something that grew back stronger after being buried. A year after the verdict, I visited the cemetery. It might sound strange, but I needed to see my own grave. The headstone still stood there. Claire Bennett, beloved wife. Someone had left flowers, though I didn't know who. I stood in front of it and whispered, "She's gone, but I'm still here." Then I laid a small shell from the beach on the stone, a piece of my new life, fragile but real. As I turned to leave, the wind picked up, rustling the trees, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story. That night, I wrote my final letter, the one I'd never written before. This one wasn't to Mark. It was to myself. You survived. Not because you were fearless, but because you finally chose yourself. You were once the woman who waited for love to return. Now you are the woman who builds her own peace. I sealed the letter, not to send it, but to keep it as proof. Proof that life after betrayal wasn't just possible. It could be beautiful. Weeks later, Karen called to tell me she'd seen Mark. He'd come back to town briefly, alone, looking older, thinner. She said he'd asked about me. "What did you tell him?" I asked. She smiled through the phone. "I told him you're doing fine, better than fine." And that was enough. I didn't need revenge or closure or apologies. I had something rarer. Peace. Sometimes life doesn't end when they think it does. Sometimes it just begins again, quietly, painfully, beautifully. When I look back now, I realize that what broke me wasn't just betrayal. It was believing I had no life beyond it. But pain has a strange purpose. It burns away what's false so that the truth, the real you, can finally breathe. Mark once begged for a divorce, thinking freedom meant leaving me behind. But I was the one who found freedom, not from him, but from needing his love to feel whole. To the women who've been lied to, replaced, forgotten, I want you to hear me. You are not what they walked away from. You are what they could never handle. Because the moment I chose myself, I stopped being the woman they pitied and became the woman they could never forget. So when I visit that old headstone with my name on it, I don't see death. I see rebirth. A reminder that sometimes you have to lose everything to finally find yourself. Would you have done what I did? Walked away without looking back? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life after someone tried to bury you, remember this. You weren't buried. You were planted